Hey, welcome to Whitefields Community Church, Sermon Extra. I'm here with Pastor Nick Cady, who is the pastor of Whitefields Community Church here in Longmont, Colorado. It's great to have you with us once again. This week we are continuing through our series called Remembering the Prophets, which we took from James chapter 5, verse 10. And this week we are looking at Jeremiah. And Jeremiah was an interesting character called the weeping prophet. His life was one kind of filled of a lot of. He didn't seem to accomplish what he set out to do. He kind of dies in Egypt, being stoned to death. But your sermon was titled, Recipe in Courage, and this book is definitely that. Just Jeremiah was a very courageous person. He had a message that was going. He was the minority trying to preach a very unpopular message to the majority. And one of the things that you didn't quite look at on Sunday was, one of the most popular verses or most famous verses was chapter 29, verse 11. And interestingly enough, this chapter is actually written to the captives from Egypt, to those in Jerusalem. And it's chapter 29, verse 7, "For I know that the thoughts that I think toward you, says the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you future and a hope." And so what were your thoughts on that particular passage?
Yeah, so it's a really popular passage. I think there's even been some statistics that have shown, from online sources and Bible apps and stuff, that this is maybe the number one shared verse from the Bible, or quoted and stuff like that. This is really popular. I'm not sure it means what everyone thinks it means. Is one thing. Here's one of the things that we got to remember when we read the Bible is that a lot of the yous are actually y'alls. Now, I don't like to say y'all. It makes me kind of sick to my stomach to even hear myself say it. But we don't have a good word in English or in our American English vernacular for saying the plural you. But you understand that if you were to read this in the original language, or if you speak a different language that uses plural yous, then you'll notice this. He's not saying, that I know the plans I have for you individually, plans to give you future and hope. He's speaking collectively to the people of God. And I think that's really a nice corrective for us to think about when we read this verse, is understand he's speaking to the people of God. Now, in that sense, that we are, as Christians, that we are part of the people of God. That's what it means to be a Christian, is to be part of God's people who are being saved. In that sense, it does apply to us, right? That God has plans for his people, plans to give them future and hope. But remember the context. He's speaking about the exile. So he's writing from Egypt. So what I didn't get into yesterday, here's what happened with Jeremiah. Jerusalem gets attacked by Nebuchadnezzar and Babylon. And Jeremiah goes with a group of people, and they flee down to Egypt, fleeing the sacking of Jerusalem by the Babylonians. And so it's from Egypt that he's now writing to, in this case, he's writing to the elders who remained in Jerusalem after the sacking of Jerusalem. And by the way, it happened over a period of about 10 years, where, for example, Daniel, when we're studying him, Babylon attacks, and they don't totally destroy the city. They just kind of loot the city, take some people away, but they don't totally overcome it until about 10 years later. So it happened in a series of attacks. But so Jeremiah goes down, he writes a letter to the people who remained in Jerusalem about the people who are being led into captivity into Babylon. And what he's telling them is that God has a purpose with letting this happen to you. And that's really important. That's an important message that we should get. So it's not just like a generic, hey, God's got good plans for you, and period. It's saying this: even in the midst of your difficulty, God is doing this, and he has a plan with it. So in other words, trust in what God is doing. Don't run away. Don't flee from it. Just trust in what he's doing. This is also the same passage in which he tells them, hey, you're going into exile. There was a false prophet in chapter 28 called Hananiah, who told the people, hey, this exile thing is not going to last long, 6 months, maybe a year. And Jeremiah's like, no, it's actually going to last a lot longer. Don't listen to Hananiah. His message might be popular because it's positive, but that doesn't make it true. And so Jeremiah says, look, here's the truth. It's going to be a really long exile. And that's hard. That's not what you want to hear. But God has a good plan with it. And he tells them, build houses, plant gardens. And then this very important verse for, I think, us to apply to our lives today is chapter 29, verse 7. Seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile. Pray to the Lord on its behalf and for its welfare, because in its welfare you will find your welfare. And that's really important. Right? He's saying, even in this wicked city, Babylon, I want you to pray for the welfare of the city. I want you to serve the city. I want you to love the city. I want you to settle down and be involved in the goings-on of the city. And so really it's a message about trusting God even in the midst of difficulty, that he has a good plan, that he's going to bring you through it and make you better through it. And truly that's what happened with the exile. There were actually a ton of really good benefits that happened to the people of Israel through the exile.
Yeah, definitely. That totally falls in line with one of your main points on Sunday morning in your introduction. We talked about our defining what success is. Jeremiah would not have defined success like most of Fortune 500 companies would define success in the United States, And so, that's very important that we see these verses in light of what's success in God's economy and what's success and what we think, And I think it's important for us to get our, to line up with what God says and find and put these things into context. And very, very insightful book, and great to go back and take a look at the life of Jeremiah and kind of understand where he was coming from. And so it's part of a great series that we're going through, and I hope you continue with us. And if you've missed any of our other sermons, whitefieldschurch.com. You can also get connected with our podcast. Just go to iTunes or Google Play, wherever. Just type in Whitefields Church, and you can, if you're a podcaster, you can get connected with us that way, and you're always reminded when something new comes up. On YouTube, of course, ring the bell, notifications, you'll get reminded when anything's new. And we hope you join us next week. I think we are getting into Daniel.
Yep.
Daniel, and we're looking forward to that one as well. So may God bless you. We'll see you later.